Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this evening. For those of you that may have not, where we haven't met yet, my name is Gene Sullivan. I'm president, one of the owners of New Concepts. I am going to give the presentation this evening. I am going to have a time for questions to be answered because of the number of people that are on this webinar this evening. We don't have opportunity for everybody to um, talk to me personally, but you will be able to um, ask questions. We have a chat area where you can type in questions as we go, and I'll get to all of them before this evening is over. So with that, let me change my screen here, and we will get going. Tonight, we're going to be discussing association politics, the art of dealing with difficult people. That's all that politics really is about, is dealing with others. And when you've been on the board any length of time, I'm sure that after a while, you're ready to have your hair pulled out, to pull your hair out, because you have people that you don't know how to deal with, people that are very difficult. Tonight, we want to be able to deal with those difficult people, and we're going to give you some strategies to use and how to deal with different personality types that you might run into in your homeowner association, some strategies to use as a board so that you can be cohesive, so that you can learn to build a consensus and be able to move forward, knowing that you have a majority of the people behind you. And we'll be talking a little bit about some of the rules of the game to kind of set down so that everybody knows how they are going to relate with one another. So let's begin. We're going to be first looking at a quote from James Madison, one of our founding fathers. And he said there are two methods for curing mischiefs of faction. I kind of like that way of describing a difficult person. They're a mischief of faction. And there are two ways he thought you can handle that. Number one is you can remove the cause, which might be removing the individual, or you can learn how to control the effects that a difficult person has. And he said, remember that he said that, sorry, here I lost my place. He said, remember, liberty is to faction what air is to fire. And I like that. I like that description, that metaphor. It can be easy for us a lot of times to say, well, we've got difficult people on the board. We may have difficult people in the association. And so what you want to do is you want to try and have a meeting without those people present, because then you're not going to be dealing with the difficult person. But you haven't really solved anything that way. And you're not being very transparent and open. But you if you do know how to control the situation, then you can be able to be free to be able to deal with people like that and be able to move on. And that's what we're going to be talking about this evening. And so you can either destroy, as we talked about, the liberty, which is essential to the existence, or give every citizen the same opinions, passions, and interests. What Madison's saying here basically is you either don't allow for an open session for people to participate, or you learn how to get people to get on board with you, to be able to build a consensus together. Okay, so what we want to do is moral of the story, we don't want to outlaw the use of fire. We want to learn how to control it and use it to everyone's benefit. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So like I said, this evening, we're going to begin by looking at the characteristics of a difficult board member, what to look for. We're going to take a look at some of the reasons that may be the cause for that person to be difficult, and why you're seeing that difficulty emerge. We're going to talk about strategies to use when you're in that situation with a difficult person. How do you deal with different types? Next, we're going to take a look at prevention techniques to help stay out of difficult situations. So we'll not only take a look at strategies in dealing with someone who might be difficult at a meeting, but we're going to talk about techniques that will keep you from getting in a difficult situation to begin with. And we're going to talk about instituting standards which will allow for everyone to be treated fairly. And then we're going to talk about when all else fails, because ultimately there's a lot you can do with difficult people. Isn't it amazing? Some of the people who you thought were very difficult homeowners to deal with at annual meetings, and you wonder what kind of board member they're going to be when they put their hat in the ring and they say they want to be on the board, and you think, oh, this is going to be difficult. And then they get on the board and you begin to realize they're a wonderful person to deal with. And so we're going to be able to talk about what some of those knowledge-based solutions are. Let's take a look at what are some of the common characteristics to look out for in a difficult board member or homeowner. The first type of character that I'm sure you may have run into is that you have the person who is always a contrarian. You have a majority that has made a decision, and then you want to move on, only to find out that the next month that person won't allow things to rest. They continue to argue. They continue to cause conflict. There's anxiety, confusion. They just won't let up. There are other people that are more ego-centered, and these are people that are lack the ability to be able to take a look at things from anything other than from their perspective. You have difficult type people who show little regard or time for other people's opinions. Other character qualities in a difficult person that you may find is the person who doesn't mind being on the edge of questionable ethics. That's the person who always seems to be pushing the envelope a little bit. There's a difficult person that you may have dealt with in your association. They view themselves as the voice of the people. And they're the ones that are going to be speaking, and they tell you that they're speaking for everybody else because everybody else feels the way that they do. And then with difficult people, you have the kind of person who does not understand nor wish to. They understand their role or their roles of others on the board. They don't want to. They don't want to put in the time. That's a difficult person to deal with as well. When you have someone who just resigns himself to not wanting to be very active as well. But what are some of the reasons why you see some of these difficult characteristics emerge from people? Well, first you have what I call personality issues. In a personality issue, we're talking about people who just don't get along with others for one reason or another. It could be a lack of trust and respect. When you deal with someone who has a lack of trust or respect, it's been my experience that a lot of times someone who isn't very trusting, it's either because they went through something very traumatic and they just don't want to see that ever happen again. Or it might be because that person themselves, they know deep down in their heart that they're not trustworthy. And so they think to themselves, well, if I'm that way, everybody else must be that way as well. Another type of personality issue that will emerge will just be personality conflicts. And that's just, you don't like the way someone says something. That's the kind of person who will say, well, I just tell it like I see it. I tell the truth. And what they really mean is, I choose to lack to share anything with any discretion or any grace, and I don't care if I step on toes or not. There are other people that have clear political differences, and that's why you don't agree. There are philosophical differences. Let me give you an example. You see this in how money is spent in a homeowners association. One question I ask people on the board a lot when we're dealing with finances and money, and that is when I ask the question, when do you need to get your car in to get a repair for your brakes? There are some people that don't want to wait till the very end for the brakes to go out and say, well, I've got 100% use of my brakes. Now that they're not working, now I'll go ahead and get them repaired. But we have people that do that when it comes to a building or when repairs need to take place. If you were to talk to my grandfather, how do you get a car and treat it? My grandfather would have said, you get a new car, and every 2 years you trade it in. My dad would have said, well, you get a car, and unless you can get 250,000 miles, you haven't got your money's worth. Both are just philosophical differences in how to treat cars. Is one right over the other? No. But it's good to know and understand how the other person feels. And those are philosophical differences. And sometimes those are things that need to be talked about when you're on the board. And then, of course, we talked about people that lack commitment. These are people who you have asked to be on the board because you need people to serve, but they do so unwillingly. Now, besides the personality issues, we also have other kinds issues, and those are what I call knowledge issues. Knowledge issues are a little bit different, but sometimes these are the ones that can be easier to address. For personality issues, you're talking about someone's personality and how they are, and it's good to understand where someone's coming from. But you can't necessarily change a person's personality, can you? Knowledge issues, you can. These things, knowing the issues that are difficult issues you're dealing with in your association that are knowledge issues, those can be fixed because we're talking about a lack of communication. In the example that I gave earlier, that person who may seem to be very difficult and have a lot of difficult questions that they ask you at every annual meeting, and then they raise their hand and say they want to serve on the board. And you go, oh, they're going to be difficult to deal with. Then you realize they're great to work with once you've been working with them for a few months. And part of the reason there was difficulty was there was just a lack of communication. They didn't know what you knew on the board. And now that you are dealing and working together a lot more, you realize we're working well. If people have a lack of teamwork, there's some people that don't know how to really work well in a group. Some people have jobs where they work just by themselves. And so that's something that can be learned on how to work well with other people. Another knowledge issue could be not understanding the role of the board. Sometimes people have difficulty in clashes only because people are getting not staying in their own lane, if you will. Everybody's not understanding what their particular role is. If everybody knows and understands their role and how that works together, then you can have a very cohesive unit. Sometimes the knowledge issue is just because you have insufficient information. People are difficult because they're concerned about an issue because they don't have the information that they need to be able to make a decision. That can be changed. There are people that have poor listening skills. People who will hear something and pass it on as truth and it's just rumor. These are things that can be dealt with very easily. And we'll be talking about that a little bit later this evening. But other than the character qualities that we talk about, and we've talked about personality issues and knowledge issues, what are some strategies that you can use when a difficult personality type arises, either in your board meeting, your annual meeting, when you're meeting with homeowners? Let's talk about some of these things. One of the strategies that I think makes a lot of sense is to, when you're on the board, make sure from the very beginning that you initiate the process in how you're going to make decisions. Okay? And initiate a decision-making process which identifies differences in opinions and plan a course of action that includes the whole board. So in other words, what you need to do is to make sure that you're getting participation from everybody. It can be very easy, you know, to have an individual who is free to share their opinion, and then you have other people that end up being very quiet, and that can be kind of concerning. But if you make a process where you just say, okay, you know, Tom, we've heard enough from you. Now we want to hear from Sally. Sally, what do you think? And make sure that you include the entire board. Another strategy to remember when you're dealing with personality difficulty is be open and willing to share concerns that you have that you see developing in a board. With Minnesota Nice, a lot of times we have people who don't want to say anything because they say they don't want to get anybody into trouble. They don't want to get people more upset. But what we really need sometimes is honesty, and we need to be willing to share concerns. I've seen it over and over where someone doesn't say anything, and what they will do is they'll finally get to a point where you have a good person who's on the board who just resigns and gives up. But that's not the person that you want to give up. That's not the person you want to see resign. And so you need to make sure that you have an environment, and you need to be willing to have the discussion even when it's difficult. We need to also recognize and then build upon the strengths of all board members. If you have that person who just needs more information before a decision is made, maybe that's the person that you want to task with going out and getting additional information, so that they can feel that they have a little bit of control. Strategies to use with difficult people: develop an ongoing communication program that includes all board members. One of the things that I like to stress with all of our property managers, and I hope that they do that with all of you on the board, and that is don't ever get in the habit of developing where one person on the board after the meeting asks a question or gives direction on something to do, and it didn't take place in the board meeting. Make sure that you're disciplined enough as a board to say that all ongoing communication, all direction that we're going to give to the management company, we're going to do at the board meeting, and it's going to come from all board members. We need to remember Minnesota state statute also makes it clear that if decisions need to be made by a board of directors outside of a regularly scheduled board meeting, that you need to hear from everyone before moving ahead. There are times when people will not say anything. They won't bring anything up at the board meeting. Why? Because there's difficult people and they don't want to deal with the hassle of people arguing. So what do? They end up just waiting till after the meeting and then sending an email on to the manager. And then they'll just get one or two other people to chime in, and they'll argue in their own mind that, well, there's 5 of us on the board, and you've heard from 3 of us. If it was a board meeting, that would be a majority. So go ahead and do this. And what a lot of people do is they end up developing a habit of getting a lot of things decided outside of board meetings, not giving everybody on the board a chance to discuss and be involved. And that doesn't lend itself in the long term to having a good working relationship with everybody on the board, and that can cause even larger problems. So always develop that if there's going to be communication to one, there's communication to all. So we tell our property managers that if one board member is asking a question or giving direction, they respond by always responding to that person and also including everybody else on the board so there's transparency. Other strategies to remember to use in dealing with difficult people is stay on top of issues. And we've talked about this a little bit, even when things are uncomfortable. When things are uncomfortable, Minnesota Nice says we don't want to bring them up. But sometimes the best thing you can do in showing respect to other people, even when you have a disagreement, is to be willing to talk about an issue, even when when there's an uncomfortableness because people disagree. We want to remember that we need to treat all board members equally. We need to discuss issues with all board members, not a few, as I just mentioned, where people get the habit of getting things done outside of the meeting. You want to discourage any prearranged agreements or secret meetings by a part of the board. A lot of times that can happen where you have 2 or 3 people that are more active and they just want to just get things done and they just end up doing things on their own. That's not a good way. That's not a good way to move forward as a board. It's not showing respect to other people. Other strategies to use when difficult personality types arise. Help all board members to understand, and this ought to be a guiding principle for everybody that serves on the board, and that is that we want to know what the will of the consensus of the majority is. It's not individuals giving direction. We want the consensus of the majority. And sometimes that may mean when you're dealing with issues that you know are going to be a little bit controversial, you need to have perhaps not just wait to the annual meeting. You may want to have a special meeting of the members to bring things up so that you can talk and get a consensus and find out what the will of the majority is, because you have a fiduciary duty as a board member to make sure that the decisions you're making are in line with the consensus of the majority. One other strategy to remember when dealing with difficult personalities, very rarely do you have what I call a win-lose scenario, okay? One person wins, one person loses. We need to remember that everybody sometimes wants something a little bit different when in a matter, in an issue. And so sometimes we need to seek to try and find a win-win. And that's working towards building a consensus, not where you're going to get everybody to agree with you all 100% of the time, but you've taken the time to get and hear from a majority of people to know what the wishes of the majority are, and then try to work something out so that it's something that everybody can live with. We need to learn to anticipate difficult people and difficult people that you're going to run into. And you can do that by taking a little time to prepare. Okay? Institute a no surprise rule. I think this is a strategy that is very important. If you know there's someone who's always a naysayer, like I said in the last tip, you can learn to anticipate. If you know someone is going to have difficulty with something with the finances, be prepared with going over the financial statement so that you can be prepared to give an answer. And then together as a board, you need to say, we're not going to just surprise anything on anybody. In other words, we're not going to, that may mean that you don't just allow someone to change the agenda that evening and to bring something up if others aren't prepared to talk about it. Because sometimes a difficult person, will say, well, that's an easy way to get my way, is I'll bring it up and surprise it on others. They won't have an answer. And so I'll say, okay, and I'll push them to do things the way I want them to be done. Institute a no surprise rule among yourselves as a board. Other strategies to use. You need to remember that when you're on the board, you need to assist the board president as the leader, okay? They're trying to move, their role is to move the association forward in being able to make the decisions that need to be made in a timely way to be able to see that the property is run smoothly and things are getting done. Another strategy to remember as a board might mean to conduct a annual self-evaluation of the board with an open, frank discussion. You know, a lot of times it's easy to say, well, we have difficulty because, well, it's the property manager. Well, we have difficulty because it's these homeowners and the way they act. But as a board, have you ever taken a couple of moments to say, what is it that we're doing that's working well? What is it that we're doing that isn't working at all? Have you had a regular, even an annual self-evaluation of what's working and what's not? That might be a good thing to do as a board. You may want to institute that board members stay on the subject in discussions. Recognize that variance only causes problems. That's where we get back to the no surprise rule. You have an agenda. Make sure that you stay on the agenda and follow that, okay? Institute a policy that always delays making a decision before having sufficient information. Sometimes the biggest decisions that you need to make as a board are made on an emotional basis. And I know they're important, and people feel that they are, some things are an emergency, but sometimes the best thing you can do is to not make a hasty decision. When we lead with our emotions, then we make hasty decisions. Maybe you want to make a policy on the really big issues. We're going to discuss it 1 month, but we won't make a decision that night. We'll wait until the next meeting when we actually make the decision, to have a little bit of time. Instituting, not everything has to be a rush, okay? Other strategies to use with difficult people, especially if you're on a board. As a board, adopt a code of ethics. I don't know if you have seen it, but the Community Associations Institute has a one-page piece that talks about the code of ethics for the board. That might be something to ask your property manager to get a hold of for you. And every time you go through an annual meeting, and then that very next meeting when you've had a few new members who are now on the board, and before you begin to work together, you take a few minutes once a year to take a look at that code of ethics, which will talk about how are we going to treat one another? How are we going to relate? And that can make things a lot easier. It's the same with what is it we like about professional sports? We like the fact that there are rules to the game. Why do people like baseball? Because they know what the rules are. And when people know what the rules are, and you know what they are before you start the game, guess what? It allows for a professional sportsman-like conduct to take place. The same thing should happen with the board. Before you begin to work together, begin to take a look at your code of ethics of what are you going to agree on how you're going to relate, how you're going to treat one another, how are you going to make decisions, and stick to that. Do not allow a difficult board member to continuously disrupt the group. And this is where going back to sometimes you need to have the hard conversation instead of being Minnesota nice, where we say, time out here. I'm sorry, Sean, but you've been interrupting a lot of people here. I think we need to take a step back, and we're going to just let one person speak at a time. And we need to be able to talk to people and to be able to do it instead of just allowing it to build and build because of our Minnesota nice. Insist that all board members read the information provided before attending the meeting. We're talking about the board packet. I know that there are some people who say, well, there are sometimes the manager may not get the board packet a few days ahead of time to be able to review. But also equally, I know that there are a number of times when the board packet is sent out a few days ahead of time, and nobody takes the time to read the board packet prior. If there are questions that you have, those are times that you can call the property manager and say, hey, I'm going to be asking this question. Can you find this out for the evening meeting? And so insist that all board members take the time to show respect to one another. You're going to be able to make decisions. You're going to be in the know if everybody's taken the time to read the information that's provided. We talked about the importance of providing an agenda, which is easily understood, and more importantly, that is what is followed. Okay. And if you still have someone who's difficult, who wants to take you off point, off of the agenda, if necessary, there may be important for you as an entire board to confront the difficult individual with a statement of concern and say, hey, you know what, you're talking over other people, or you are not coming prepared, or whatever it might be, but talk together to someone. Now, those are just some different strategies to consider and how to deal with someone when you're in a meeting. But now we want to talk about prevention techniques. This is how to stay out of difficult situations or from them beginning to begin with. Benjamin Franklin said an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Okay. Give board candidates a brief written statement of their job, their requirements, prior to being elected on the board. We talked about it once people have been elected to the board and you have a new slate of people serving that year. Take that first meeting and make sure that you talk about each other's roles. Go through your code of conduct and ethics and how you're going to treat one another ahead of time before you get into it. If you do that, you have a better chance with everybody saying, I agree, these are values that we're going to all take as we work together as a board. Prevention techniques that help stay out of problem. We talked about establishing a new board member orientation class as soon as they're elected. We've been talking about that. You're going to make sure you talk about roles and responsibilities, board policy. You might want to also take a moment. Here's a great idea. Every year after the annual meeting, and you get together that first time and you're talking about your roles and responsibilities, how you're going to relate to one another, that might be the time to say to the manager at that first meeting, let's take a look at all of the contracts that we have in place. And that includes ours as well. And so that you will be able to say, this is what is agreed upon. Wouldn't it be nice to have to go into the start of the year instead of saying, what is that? What is that contract? What does that say? Instead of taking the time to be knowledgeable to know that, with the grounds care company, they do the grounds care, they do the snow removal, but they don't do irrigation. That's a different company. Oh, I didn't know that. What's their contract? And if they do have a contract, to know something like a trigger depth. When will they come out? When the snow's reached 1.5 inches or higher. But if it's 1 inch or less, nobody's coming out. But you need to know what the contracts say. And so go through the contracts. Take time to go through some past minutes. Might be important, especially with important decisions that have been made. And like I said, review ethical standards that everybody will abide by. Okay. In short, taking an orientation class and some time to do this, you might spend your one whole meeting just dealing with this, but I tell you, you'll be so much more productive for the rest of the year if you are all working from the same base and from this same vantage point, okay? And then, of course, other prevention techniques. Realize that there are other groups. There is CIC Midwest through MHA. There's Community Associations Institute, CAI. There's the HOA Leadership Network, another one. So there's a number of professional groups where you as a board can be involved to be sharp, and to be real effective as a board member and a leader in your association. Okay. The standards which allow everyone to be treated fairly. We want to talk about that. And again, these are some of the things we want to all agree upon from the beginning of the year. You want to flesh out hidden agendas, okay? We're going to be open with people. Deal with conflict immediately. Do not retreat. That's probably one of the hardest things for people to do. People like to retreat. They don't want to confront. But sometimes the nicest thing you can do, the way you can show the most respect to someone, is by saying, I don't know that I agree with you, and here's why, and to be able to try and come up with that. Be committed to always working on improving communication. And what I mean by that is make sure that you are being specific. There are so many times when someone will begin the conversation with, everyone thinks this, or this just happened. And then you ask someone, when did that happen? Oh, I don't know. But if someone can't be specific, you may want to work on improving communication by asking people to be more specific. Because it's amazing. Sometimes someone was talking about a difficult issue, and only to find out that that person had sold their unit about 8 months ago and didn't know it. So work on communication, work on your information. Remember that you need to have recognition of a problem before you can ever try to solve it. Sometimes we want to get things solved quickly because we just don't want to hear other people complain. And what we're really saying is what we really want to solve are the complaints, but that's not solving the issue or the problem. So make sure that you take the time to recognize and say, what is the problem here? What is it that I need to know before we're going to be able to come to a decision to be able to solve it? Make sure you deal with facts, not personalities. Always encourage and promote homeowner attendance to meetings. Be transparent. You know, a lot of times it's amazing. You are on the board and you've been dealing with the situation and discussing it for several months. You come to a decision, and then you now finally bring it before all of the homeowners, and you get a lot of pushback from the homeowners, and you go, why are people being so difficult? And you say, this is what we've got to do. But you fail to remember that it took you a number of months of grappling with the issues to be able to get to a point where you're at making the decision that you are. Realize that homeowners need to be brought along that process as well. So you want to encourage people, promote their attendance to your board meetings so that they can hear the process and the issues and the things you're dealing with. It might mean that periodically you need to take a look at sending out some white paper or some notices, something that is talking about some of the things that the board is looking at and some of the things that you're trying to address. But you want to try and be transparent. Okay. Other standards here which allow everyone to be treated fairly. We want to periodically survey homeowners. Just like I mentioned that you should take a look at having the board maybe survey one another once a year to say what's working well, what isn't. Talk to the homeowners. Hey, what's working well? What's not? What would you like to see that you're not? Okay. Try and ask for that information. Remember to respect every opinion and allow a procedure for all to be heard. Make sure that with your board meetings, so before you meet, I think most probably do this, but make sure you have a homeowner forum. Do you have an opportunity for homeowners to share what's on their mind, what their concerns are, so that you kind of are taking the pulse of your community? Are you making sure that the wishes of the majority are what is going to prevail? And then those that are in the minority will realize, okay, we didn't win today. We're not going to get our way, but that's okay. So we will work for another day. And then when all else fails, okay, You're going to realize that not everybody's going to agree 100%. Expect there's going to be a split vote, maybe on most issues. But whatever the majority of the people vote on what that is, that's what you do moving forward. And just realize that's life. We're not going to get everybody to agree 100% of the time. This is what's difficult. Learn to ignore the difficult board members or the difficult homeowners' behavior. A lot of times we translate that in trying to ignore the member, but just try to ignore the behavior while acknowledging and listening to their concerns. And you may get to a point where with some people, at the end of the day, they're still not going to agree and they only want things done their way. And you can get to a point where you can finally say, on this issue, we are considering our conversation done. On other matters, we want to encourage you to bring them up. We'll talk about that. But this matter we are considering is being done. And sometimes that's what you need to do, because there are some homeowners who will write and they will never give up. You answer them, and then they only send another 1 or 2 emails to you, and things never get done. Realize that some people only are going to be happy when things are done their way and their way only, and you can't make everybody happy. You may need to learn to isolate the difficult board member. If the board member is getting to a point where they're being very obstructionist and being continually rude and will not listen to others, that isolation may mean that you as a board may need to take a look at your options according to your governing documents on how to have that person removed. Okay? Remember, we need to always work to hold the majority together. And keep your credentials in order. In other words, in everything that we do, we want to make sure that our intentions and our motives are always the best. It's all that we really have. So now we have time for questions and comments, and I'm going to stop sharing the screen here, and I'll see what kind of questions. I have one question from a person here who said, would New Concepts be open to providing a new board member orientation, or do the boards need to develop and deliver the actual training? Yes, I'm happy to take a look at that. Our last seminar was talking about the role of the board, and that is something that we could certainly look at having done several times a year. But it's also, I think, good. My point is you don't have to think of doing all of the actual training, but taking some time to say, how are we going to relate to one another? That could be very important. Another question here. 2 board members have mentioned that they don't want any conflict with their neighbors and or board members. I like the idea of a homeowners forum that is separate from the annual meeting. Well, let me just say that there are 2 types of meetings that a homeowners association will have. There's a meeting of the board, and then there's the meeting of the members. The annual meeting is the meeting for the members. The purpose of that meeting is not for the board to run it. That's for everybody to run it. And so you have an agenda, and you have a parliamentarian, and you have someone who is going to have agenda items that are going to be addressed. But the purpose of that meeting is for the members to be able to bring things up. But to that point, sometimes I've known a couple of association boards who've said, we give 15 minutes for a homeowners forum at the start of every board meeting. We have the annual meeting, but we've had a couple of clients of ours who have also said, twice a year, we're going to just have what we call a homeowners forum. We're just getting together. And the purpose is answer questions that homeowners have, find out what's on people's minds, and it's just another time of trying to get and cull the information from other people. That can be a good way of doing it. Another question that we have here, someone said, we have some members in our association who are unfortunately mentally unwell. Any tips to work with those sort of members? That can be very very difficult. That is where you're going to unfortunately you may be dealing with a situation where if someone doesn't have quite control of their faculties, what can you do? All you can do is try and run an orderly meeting. One of the ways to do that would be make sure that you use Robert's Rule of Order and how you process and allow everybody an opportunity to speak. Robert's Rules of Order sounds to some people to be kind of stuffy, and sometimes it seems too heady for them to know how to use it, but it's really pretty basic and pretty simple. It's just a way that allows everybody to show respect to one another and to allow everybody to have an opportunity to speak. And even though you're going to try and run the meeting in that manner, I don't know that I have anything for someone who's unwell. If anybody still gets out of hand, and sometimes they will, depending on how bad it is, you may have to take a look at other options. For some associations, that has meant adult services in the county or the city where your association resides. Sometimes they have resources and are willing to take a look at someone who is not well. Another question that we have here is, it would be very helpful to send us a model orientation manual and maybe a checklist to do when new members join. Yes, we do have that. That information I shared is that one-piece white paper that CAI puts out on the board code of ethics and how to work with one another. That is something that that will give you all of that to take a look at. And then that goes to the last question that I have from someone saying, can you send out the code of ethics for a board? Yes, we can do that. What I will do is we can make sure that we get that out, populated through to all of our property managers to get out to all boards, just to put that in perhaps the next board packet so that you have that as a resource to have. Any other questions? If not, people are saying thank you for the webinar. I want to thank you for your time this evening. I appreciate your commitment to one another that you serve with on the board of directors and the community that you serve. We appreciate you very much. And thank you again for showing up this evening. Have a good evening, everybody, and look forward to having you join us once again at our next webinar. Good night.